All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Tammuz. Rabbi Naftali Tilson of Vijar for dedicating all Visher and Joshos this month in commemoration of the yahrzeit of his parents, Rabbi Yona ben Avraham Leyb and Rivka bas Ya'akov. As well as with Akar Shatov to the entire shir, may we zoch emerz Hashem to continue and to go through Shas together for many years to come. To thank our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Rohn and Leanne Meyerowitz of Toronto, Canada, for dedicating the shir in honor of their sons' recent birthdays. We hope that emerz Hashem, all of their children, shavarichos yamim vishanim, and much incredible hatzlach. So with that, let us begin. An incredible amount to do today, emerz Hashem, both in volume as well as profundity. Let's begin. Today's daf is Nun Vav 56. We are picking up at the Mishnah on Nun Hem Beis 55b. So the Mishnah says as follows: Lo haya sikrikun biYehuda baruge milchama. There was no din of sikrikun. Now, say, what's a sikrikun? A sikrikun, Rashi says over here, sikrikun is obed kochavim rotzeach shenosein lo v'yisrael karka bepidyon nafsho va'omer lo sa karka zu va'al timiseni. So we'll say a sikrikun is a non-Jew, an obed kochav menakum, who is a murderer, who is threatening to kill a Jew. Essentially what the Jew does is he gives the sikrikun property so that the sikrikun will leave him alone. That's the sikrikun. Fine. They both say, now there's one more piece to this, is that sometimes the sikrikun will actually pay for the property, but as we'll see, ultimately again, he often pays below, he pays below market. So the Mishnah therefore says that the din of sikrikun does not apply ultimately again b'haruge milchama, when people are being killed during war. Me'haruge milchama ve'elach, but from wartime and on, yesh ba sikrikun. There is a din ultimately again of sikrikun. I will say we'll define exactly in the Gemara what that means. Ketzad, what's the example? So how does this work? Lakach mi sikrikun v'chaz v'lakach mi balabais mekho batal. So let's imagine the following situation. You have Ruvain, right? Ruvain has land forcibly taken from him from the sikrikun. What does Shimon do? Shimon then goes ahead and comes to the sikrikun and he buys the property from the sikrikun, and afterwards goes ahead and buys it from Ruvain. Okay? So we'll say, what's talacha mekho batal? The transaction is void. Now, why is the transaction void? Because since Shimon already bought it from the sikrikun, Ruvain is going to feel that he has no choice but to go ahead and sell to Ruvain, in order not to go ahead and upset the sikrikun. On the other hand, if Shimon comes to Ruvain first, purchases it from Ruvain, the chazar v'lakach miSikrikun, and then he buys it from the sikrikun, ultimately mekho kayim. The sale is a valid sale. Since Shimon went ahead and first bought out the ownership interest of Ruvain, and then went to the sikrikun, ultimately, again, it's a valid sale. I will say this will make more sense in the Gemara just a little bit. Similarly, lakach min ish v'chaz v'lakach min ha'isha mekho batal. But it doesn't follow the scenario. Ruvain is married to Rachel. Let's say Ruvain identifies for Rachel a piece of property that is going to be the source of payment for her ksuva. So then what happens? Shimon goes over to Ruvain and purchases the property, and then it goes over to Rachel and purchases, so to speak, from her. So that sale is batal. Why? Because Rachel is going to feel compelled to sell in order not to cause shalom bayis problems with her husband. Conversely, if Shimon first goes ahead and purchases Rachel's ownership interests and then goes to Ruvain the husband, then ultimately mekho kayim. The sale is going to be good because since he bought out Rachel first, so ultimately again we believe that Rachel is being sincere with her desire to sell. Incredible. So the Gemara goes right to Zu Mishnah Rishona. This is the first iteration of the halacha. Beis Din Shacharei Amru B'Savskan Beis Din said, Halokech Misikrikun Nosein L'Bailim Revia. So the second iteration of this halacha said as follows: you could buy property directly from a sikrikun. But what do you need to do? You need to go ahead and give a quarter of the value of the property to the original Jewish owner. They both say, what's the logic of that? So Rashi explains, as I mentioned before, a sikrikun would often extort property. That's really what he would do is he would go to the Jew, quote unquote, make an offer. It was an offer you couldn't refuse. Why? Because if you did, the sikrikun would kill you. So the Jew would sell under duress. So I'll say that's what's driving all of this. These are all sales that are made under duress. When it's under duress, there's a concern that it's not really being made with the proper intent and consent of the seller. The second iteration of the halacha, they said like this: Jew, you could buy directly from the sikrikun, but when you do, you have to pay a quarter of the value of the property to the original Jewish owner. Why? Because often what would happen is the sikrikun would buy the property, but he would buy it at a discount. Who determined the discount? Who determined the discount? The sikrikun. And often the discount was he'd pay about a quarter below market. So therefore, again, if you're a Jew, you could buy directly from the sikrikun, but you have to make the original Jewish owner whole by giving him a quarter of the value of the property. Emasai, when is this so? Bisman shem biyadon likach. Ultimately, again, I will say when the assumption was that the original Jewish owner does not have the ability to repurchase it from the sikrikun. Aval yesh biyadon likach hein kamen l'cha'adam. But if the original Jewish owner has the ability to repurchase it from the sikrikun, he has the right to first refusal. You're right, he has the right to first buy the property. Rabbi Hosheb Bezin, Rabbi set up a Bezin, and they decided, Shimsha sabifnei sikrikun shnei masar chodesh, kol hakodem likach zacha. Avanos in the Bailam Revia. So I'll say in the final iteration of the halacha, which is with the Bezin of Rabbi, ultimately again they decided that essentially the original Jewish owner has up to 1 year to go ahead and buy it back from the sikrikun. If he does not buy it back from the sikrikun within that first year, then halacha l'maisa, ultimately anyone who wants to buy it has the ability to do so. Okay, so we'll say, let's now kind of bring this all together. So remember again, what's happening over here is we are being introduced to this individual, the sikrikun, who is forcibly taking property from a Jew. But what comes out, Rabbi say, is he's paying for it, right? Albeit, again, he's paying under market, but Rabbi say he's paying something for it. So says the Gemara, Hashta baruge melchama lo haya basikrikun, meruge melchama ve'elach yesh basikrikun. So Gemara says, I don't understand. The way the Mishnah in the halacha was that the din of sikrikun did not apply during wartime, when people are being killed during war. So if it doesn't apply during war, it should apply after war? What's going on? Rabbi Yehuda, no. Lo danu bad din sikrikun kamar. Well, let's listen to this. Rabbi Yehuda says what the Mishnah means to say is that halacha l'maisa during wartime they did not impose or they did not apply the din of sikrikun. Now, both sides. Before we go into this Gemara, what is the din of sikrikun? The din of sikrikun says that when someone is forcing you to sell, right, extorting you, right, under duress to sell, then I will say, what's the concern over here? The Jew doesn't really consent to the sale. If the Jew doesn't consent to the sale, then what? Then the sikrikun is not the owner. If the sikrikun is not the owner, I will say, then any subsequent Jew who tries to buy from the sikrikun is going to be compromised as well. That's what's driving this halacha. That's what's unfolding over here. So I will say, so essentially what the Gemara says is like this. During wartime, they did not apply the din of sikrikun. I will say, what does that mean? During wartime, when people sell property, if it's a choice between selling property and saving my life during war, guess what? What am I choosing? I'm selling the property. And I'm selling the property wholeheartedly. It's during non-war time when ultimately, again, I'm being extorted that the sale of the property or the conveyance of the property is not wholehearted. That's what it means. But we'll say, if you take a look at Rashi says, first Rashi in the Gemara, Lo danu din sikrikun, baruge melchama, dikani legamre, v'alakech l'menamek kol kaim. Now we'll say, when it's during wartime, and mamish people are being killed, and the akum comes and he demands that I sell him my property, I'm like, sure, absolutely. Here it is, wholehearted, pay me whatever you want to pay me, and we're done. Because that price is a price I'm very happy to pay when mamish people are being killed all around me. But I will say, but after wartime, when people aren't being killed, right? After people aren't being killed, then Lamai said that's when the din of sikrikun as espoused in the Mishnah applies. Because now, this is an extorted sale. And as an extorted sale, ultimately, again, the halachos of the Mishnah are really in effect. Then Rabbi Yassi, Gimel Gzeros Gazru. So let's listen to this. There are 3 different levels of Gzera against the Jewish people. I will say, first wide line. Gezerta Kamaisa, the original halacha, the original Gzitnak halacha, the original decree was, Kotalo Katolik Telu. We'll say this is talking about during the times of the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. The original decree was that if you didn't kill a Jew, you would be killed. In other words, we'll say there was such a level of decree against the Jewish people that literally everybody had to kill a Jew. And if you were a Gentile, you didn't kill a Jew, you would be killed. Mitziasa, the second decree was, Kol dekato laisi arba zuzi. If you killed the Jew, you'd be fined 4 zuz. We'll say 4 zuz is nothing. So in other words, things at least got a little bit better. In the second decree, it was illegal to kill a Jew. Right? Now again, there wasn't really teeth to that legislation, but it applied. Basraisa, the final version of the decree, called the katal liktiluhu. Whoever ultimately again would kill a Jew would be themselves killed. It was a capital crime. Hilchach, so I'll say now watch this. Hilchach kamaisa mitziyasa kevan dekantli agav onse gamara makni. Say Rabbi say during the times when the first 2 decrees were in effect, namely, if you didn't kill a Jew, it was a mitzvah to kill a Jew, and if you didn't kill a Jew, you'd be killed. Or decree number 2, where Allah say again, if you killed a Jew, was a very minor slap on the wrist. So we'll say, if an akum came and extorted your property, guess what? You gave it to him or you sold it to him, belev shalim. Why? Because that was a good price to pay to save your life. And therefore, even though the property is being extorted, and therefore either the akum is not paying, or he's paying under market, the Jew committed to this transaction with a complete heart. Because we'll say, again, isn't that interesting? Even though it's being extorted, but what's the alternative? The alternative is death. So if my choices are death or giving away my property or selling my property under market, I wholeheartedly sell or give away my property. Done. However, again, the Gemara says, however, basraisa, by the time we get to the 3rd stage of the decree, where it once again becomes a capital crime to kill a Jew. So basraisa amriha idna lishkol lemachar tavana lebedina. The Jew would say, when the Sigrikun came along, the Jew would say, you know what? Fine, I'll give him the property today because I don't want to fight. But tomorrow I'll follow up with my legal recourse in court. Right? So we'll say, isn't that interesting? So this basically couldn't work. So when there was an active mortal danger to the Jew, and the akum was coming and extorting property, so in that case, again, the Jew would commit to the transaction belev shalim, because I want to save my life. My life is more important than my property. So I'm willing to commit to the property wholeheartedly. But again, by the time we got to the 3rd iteration, the 3rd version of the Gzeira, where again it was a capital crime to go ahead and kill a Jew. So when the property was being extorted, the Jew would quote unquote agree to the transaction, but he wasn't really agreeing. He understood that ultimately, again, he was going to follow up with all legal means and recourses at a later date. Therefore, the transaction was not a valid transaction. That's where the Mishnah kicks in, I will say, that if in this 3rd stage, if you as a Jew bought property from a Sikrikun that he extorted from another Jew, that's when again you have all of these different halachas. Is the sale a valid sale, not a valid sale? Do you have to compensate the Jew? All the various iterations of the halacha. Incredible. Now we'll say, here we go. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, "My dichsiv." What's the meaning of the pasuk? Ashrei adam mefachid tamid. Praiseworthy is the person who is always fearful. Umakshe libo yipol berah, and he who hardens his heart will fall into terrible times. Now we'll say, what's the pasuk referring to? Ashrei adam mefachid tamid. We'll say it doesn't sound good. Praiseworthy is the person who is always afraid. Afraid of what? We'll say, take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, over mefachid doik liros hanolad shelo ta'ara takala bekach im esazos. We'll say what David HaMelech is referring to and stands in the Gemara is Ashrei adam mefachid tamid means praiseworthy is the person who is always afraid of making a mistake. Now, I will say, if you're always afraid of making a mistake, then what do? Then you think about your actions before you engage in them. Right? I will say, you are roa es hanolad. If I know that at any given moment I could make a decision that results in some bad realities, what that means is I am going to think before I act. I'm going to think before I do. That's the Ashrei Adam Mefachid Tamid. Praiseworthy is the person who is always afraid of making mistakes, for he will think before he acts. So I will say, this is the introduction. to the Kamsa and Bar Kamsa story. So also listen to this. Akamsu Bar Kamsa Chaver of Yerushalayim. Because of the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, Yerushalayim was destroyed. Atarnagol v'tarnagolsa Chaver of Tur Malka. Because of a chicken and a rooster, right? The hen and a rooster, Tur Malka was destroyed. That'll be tomorrow's daf. Asaka derispak Charuv Beitar. Because of the side of the carriage, ultimately the city of Beitar is destroyed. So we'll say, here we go. A Kamsu Bar Kamsu Chavshan. So we'll say, just again, want to point out how incredible it is that in a 7.5 year cycle, we are learning the sugya of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. We are learning the story of Churban Yerushalayim during the 3 weeks. We will say it is absolutely incredible. Yankee Stammen pointed this out to me yesterday, how incredible the timing is. Right? I will say, again, incredible. No, just say, again, I don't know. I was never good in math, but I don't know what the statistical probability is out of thousands of lot of Gemara that ultimately, again, you have in the middle of the 3 weeks this story of the Churban. It's incredible. It's incredible. And I will say, I just want to point out, you'll understand why we introduced the story in the way we did. Here we go. So the Gemara tells the story, I will say. So I come to Rakaz Kabishan. Dahu Gavra, there was a guy. And I will say, I will point out over here, the name of the guy remains anonymous. Right? You'll see why. It was a balabas in Yerushalayim. And what happened? Derachme Kamsa, his friend was Kamsa, Ubal Debave Bar Kamsa. And his enemy was Bar Kamsa. Bal Debave literally means the guy who we fought with. His enemy was Bar Kamsa. Avet Sudasa, the balabas, made a beautiful Suda. Amrali the Shame, he said to his servant, Gzil Aisile Kamsa, go and invite my friend Kamsa to the meal. Azal Aisile Bar Kamsa. The Shamis, right, the servant made a mistake, and what did he do? An honest mistake. He invited Bar Kamsa, the balabas's enemy, instead. Asa Ashkeche, so we'll say, now watch this. So it's the night of the party. The balabas walks into his party. Ashkeche Dahavi Yasiv. And who does he find in his party? Who does he find sitting there? Bar Kamsa. Amrale, Michtiahu Gavra Bal Debava Dahu Gavrahu. So the balabas says, essentially, Bar Kamsa, you're my enemy. You're my enemy. My boys hacha. What are you doing here? Kum puk. Get up and get out. Now I will say, pause here for just a second. What's incredible? Even before we go on, what's incredible about this? So we'll say, what's incredible about this? Bar Kamsa showed up to the party. We'll say, remember, these guys are enemies, and you can see from the story. That they really hated each other. So what's fascinating about this is, right, so the balabas who remains unnamed, right, so Bar Kamsa gets an invitation to this party. So we'll say, so you would have thought, what would Bar Kamsa have done? What would he have done? Tear it up. Right, tear it up, send him back hate mail. They have a chutzpah to invite me to your party. Let me tell you I would never step foot in your party. Right, and give you 100 reasons. Yet, Bar Kamsa shows up. We'll say, what does that show you? That Bar Kamsa Bepashtos was ready for reconciliation. Whatever the problem was, he took this invitation as the olive branch. He took this invitation as an opportunity for reconciliation, which I will say amplifies the profound tragedy of this story. So Bar Kamsa sitting in this meal, thinking that a reconciliation is ready, right? That they're literally is going to reconcile. Who knows how long these guys have hated each other for? Bar Kamsa comes to the meal, puts on his best suit, right? We're gonna finally what is the lashon? Bury the axe? Not bury the axe. Bury the hatchet. We're gonna bury the hatchet. Same thing, right? Bury the axe, bury the hatchet, right? We're gonna bury the thing, right? We're gonna bury the zach, right? We're gonna be finished with this, and we're finally going to move on in life. And what happens? Balabas sees him, says, get out. Amrle, Hoel v'asan shafkan, v'yahavim echdemi ma'adachil no shasina. So both say it's incredible. Now, Bar Kamsa doesn't want to make a scene. So Bar Kamsa, listen, I'm here already. Do me a favor. Don't throw me out. Just let me stay. I'll pay you for whatever I eat and drink. Keep a tab. You don't have to spend any money on me. I'll pay you for everything. I will say, once again, you see in Bar Kamsa doesn't want to make a scene. Top of nun vav. Amrle, lo. Balabas says absolutely not. Amrle, yahiv malach me pagadu sudasech. To which Bar Kamsa says, fine, I'll pay you for half of the suuda. Again, incredible. I will say, you guys are going to see This was a big su'uda. This was a big thing in Yerushalayim. I'll pay you half. Amar lei lo. Balabas says, get out. Amar lei, yehibni lach to make kula su'udasech. I'll pay you the whole su'uda. Again, the story is such a tragic one because you feel the humiliation of Bar Kamsa. You feel it, I will say. In other words, just get up and go. Just get up and go. Obviously, for him, it was so humiliating what was happening. First of all, again, this whole, Bepashtos, how like sometimes you hear people arguing and you're like, why can't you just do that in private, right? Why just, or keep your voice down, right? There have been like, sometimes you see this, like even couples who don't know how to argue discreetly, right? Sometimes they have, just why do you have to do that here, right? Why can't you just do that quietly? Hey, so I will say, so what's incredible is, this is not quiet. This is not quiet. So Bar Kamsa is trying to de-escalate. Right, Bar Kamsa trying to say, just can you just leave it alone? I'll pay for the whole suda. I'll pick up the entire tab of everything. Amar leilo. Bar Kamsa says no. Bosei finally reaches the point. Nakte biadei v'ukme va'afke. The balabas actually physically takes Bar Kamsa and removes him from the suda, kicks him out. Bosei, this is the story. So Amar lei. So Bosei, so Bar Kamsa now has been publicly humiliated. Amar, hoil v'hava yasvi rabbanon v'lo machube. So we'll say, apparently, this guy, this balabas, who remains unnamed, he remains anonymous. Now, the truth is, the Rishonim point out, why does he remain anonymous? Why should, in other words, we name the parties, we name Bar Kamsa, so I name it, we'll say, this guy committed such a terrible avera, that the truth is, his name is obscured from the Gemara almost to protect his identity and the identity of all of his future generations. We'll say, so his name, but obviously he was someone of incredible importance. How do you know that he was important? Because we'll say the leading Rabbanim of Yerushalayim were in attendance at this Seudah. Bar Kamsa says, the Rabbanim are there. The Rabbanim are there. Yet the Rabbanim didn't say anything. Shmamina kanechalahu. So we'll say, obviously, if the Rabbanim are there and no one's saying anything, so Lamaisa again, it must be that they're okay. Must be that they're okay with this. So I'm going to literally again go and deliver a slanderous report to the Caesar. So we'll say, again, there's so much to unpack in all of this. We'll say how silence is complicity. When you see something wrong occurring, I will say, if you do absolutely nothing, then ultimately, again, then you're participant. Then you're participant in the wrong. So the rabbis see another Jew being humiliated. And I will say, now, by the way, is it possible they didn't see? Sometimes in life you think other people see what's going on. They don't necessarily see what's going on. But in any event, Bar Kamsa was convinced that the Rabbanon saw what was happening and ultimately, again, did absolutely nothing. He feels, therefore, again, I will say, not just hurt and humiliated by the host, but he feels hurt and humiliated by Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael, the Rabbanim were there, they didn't do anything, they're participant in this, I'm going to go to the Caesar. Azul Amar Le Kesar, Mardu B'chal Yudai. So he goes to the Caesar, he says, Caesar, the Jews have rebelled against you. Amar Le, Mi Yemar. The Caesar says, who says? That's a pretty strong claim. How do I prove it? So ultimately, I'll show you. Send the carbon to the base of Mikdash. See if they offered it. Now, both and I remember again, you could offer up karbanos of non-Jews in the base of Mikdash. Ki base tefillah yikare lechol ha'amim. Ultimately, the Beis Hamikdash, we forget about this, but the Beis Hamikdash was not just a place of importance for Klal Yisrael, it was a place of importance for the entire world. Even the nations of the world had the opportunity to have their karbanos offered up. So Bar Kamsa says to the Caesar, try it, send the carbon, see if they offer it or not. Azul shadr biadei, egla tilsa. So the Caesar decided to fine. He gives to Bar Kamsa. Says, I'm going to give you igla tilsa. I'll say igla tilsa is like a very choice, a good animal. Either a third born calf or a calf that has reached one third of its maturity. Either way, it's considered to be like the best of karbana. So he sends with him an igla tilsa. So v'hadi the kaasi shadi b'muma. So Bar Kamsa, of course, is going to sabotage this. So what does he do? He inflicts a mum on the animal. But it will say b'niv svasayim. So some say split the lip of the animal, others say cause an injury in the eye. Now I will say Bar Kamsa was very smart. What did he do? he inflicted a mum on the animal in a way that for the goyim, right, because remember again, we'll say, by the nations of the world, they also have sacrifices, and they also have the concept of a mum, right? You're not going to just sacrifice any animal to your deity. So what he did is he inflicted the type of mum that for the nations of the world would not be a mum, but for us would. It's this very slight mum, a split lip, an injury in the eye. So what happens? So now can you imagine the scene? First white line of the Vav and Alf. Can you imagine the scene? The carbon of the Caesar arrives in the Beis HaMikdash. But say, what do they see? It has a mum. So Savar Rabbana Lekruve Mishum Shalom Malchus. So originally the Rabbana said, offer it. You got it's Sakanas Nefashos. I'll say Shalom Malchus means peace with the monarchy. This is not just peace with the monarchy. This is Sakanas Nefashos, right? Offer up the carbon. This is an existential threat to Klal Yisrael if you do not offer up the carbon of the Caesar. Offer it up. Rabbi Zichai ben Avkolos said you can't. Yomru Balei Mumin Kraven L'Gab Mizbeach. If you offer this up, people are going to think that blemished animals could be offered up on the Mizbeach. Suffer the Mikdalei, the low lays of Lema. Fine. We're not going to offer the carbon. We should kill Bar Kamsa. Rabbi say, now why are you permitted to kill Bar Kamsa? Because Bar Kamsa is a Moser. Right? Bar Kamsa is a Jew who hands over other Jews to a despotic government. I will say, I just want to point out, not a topic for today, we use the word Moser in many wrong contexts contemporarily, right? So Moser, ultimately, we think anytime a Jew contacts the authorities about other Jews, that they're a Moser. I will say, that is incorrect. There are situations where a person is obligated to go ahead and involve law enforcement. Someone else poses a danger towards other people, so there is a halachic obligation to go ahead and involve law enforcement. The concept of Mesira represents handing over Jews to a despotic government for no legitimate reason. You know, say that's what Mesira says. They said Bar Kamsa is a Moser. He is trying to go ahead and hand over Klal Yisrael to the hands of the Caesar despotic government. So we should kill him. So Amar Lahu Rabbi Zechariah, Yom Matil Mum Kashim Yerek. So also you have to understand that most people did not know the story of Bar Kamsa, right? They did not know what happened. Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkala said, if we execute Bar Kamsa, people are going to think, why is he being executed? For the sin of inflicting a mum on a carbon. People didn't know the context, and they're going to think that inflicting a mum on a carbon is punishable by kares, is punishable by misa, by death. So Rabbi says, so what happens? What do they do to Bar Kamsa? What do they do? Nothing. So they don't offer the carbon, they don't kill Bar Kamsa. Then Rabbi say, the unwritten part of the story is what? So what happens? Bar Kamsa goes back to the Caesar and says, I told you they rebelled against you because look, they did not offer up the carbon. Rabbi Yochanan, so says this is a strong Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan says, "An v'sanusel Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos hechriva es beisenu v'sarfa es hechalenu v'eglisanu mi'artzenu." Rabbi say this is a very strong Gemara. Now, an v'sanuso literally means the humility. The humility of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos destroyed our home, right? Literally incinerated our Beis HaMikdash and exiled us from Eretz Yisrael. So Rabbi Yochanan feels that the blame for the Churban, so to speak, lies at the feet of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos. Rabbi said, what does it mean, his humility? So Rashi points out, this is the last wide line on top of Rashi, an v'sanuso, savlanuso. Rashi understands an v'sanuso not as humility, but rather as what? As patience. Savlanut. Shesaval as zeh v'lo harago. So I will say, essentially, what's happening over here is Rabbi Yochanan is saying the inaction of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos. Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos refused to act. He refused to either act in offering up the carbon. He refused to act ultimately again in executing Bar Kamsa. So he calls that a savlanos, patience. He was too patient with the decision. We'll say, no, sometimes patience is good, and sometimes it's good to see how things progress, and other times one must engage in decisive action. And we'll say, sometimes we are too patient with the circumstances of life. And sometimes what life demands is not patience, but what life demands ultimately is decisive action. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos, you failed to act. and your failure to act, your failure to engage in decisive, dynamic activity, ultimately is what sealed the fate of Klal Yisrael. And I will say, that is a very sweeping condemnation of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos. Again, there's so much to say in all of these Gemaras. The Chasam Sofer says something amazing, just very quickly. The Chasam Sofer says, it is wrong to indict Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos. Let's listen to this. The Chasam Sofer says something amazing. He says, he quotes the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's Talmidim, right? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says Talmidim, Su'u u'ru'u lahem derech yishara, right? What's the right path in life? And one of the Talmidim of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, Haroa es hanolad. Life is about seeing what is going to unfold. The Chasam Sofer advances an amazing idea. The Chasam Sofer says, you could only be roa es hanolad, you could only see the future or anticipate what is going to happen for things for which you have a frame of reference. Chasam Sofer says, if you have no frame of reference for something in life, there is no way you can plan for it, no way you can say, this is why, again, we all have you ever have like this situation in life where something happens and you're like, I never saw that coming. I could have never anticipated that would have occurred. So even if I'm the kind of person who is roa es hanolad, if something is just a total outlier, never happened before, I can't plan for it. The Chasam Sofer defends Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos, and he says, never in the history of the Jewish people has something like Bar Kamsa ever occurred. They will say, have there been Jews who fight? Have there been Jews who fight? Every day. Are there Jews who get offended? Absolutely. Are there Jews who threaten to do terrible things? Unequivocally. Has there ever been a Jew who has done what Bar Kamsa did? Absolutely not. So I will say, in defense of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos, Chasam Sofer says, what did Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos, what did he think was going to happen? What did he think was going to happen? I will say, if you're Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos, what do you think is going to happen? He's going to calm down. Bar Kamsa is going to calm down. He's going to get over it, because Jews get a little bit hot under the collar, and then they calm down. Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos never expected that Bar Kamsa was actually going to go back. That's Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos is telling to the other rabbinic colleagues, guys, calm down. It's going to be fine. You don't have to offer up the carbon. We don't have to kill Bar Kamsa. He's just another irate Jew. But I say, do you know how many irate Jews there are? Right? I could actually give you a list, right? And that's just like, right? I say, so again, he's going to calm down. He's going to calm down. So the Chasam Sofer says, you could only anticipate that for which you have a frame of reference. Don't indict Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos for the Chorban. But yet, Rabbi Yochanan does. What says Kavaiter? Shadar alayhi what says, so sure enough, the Caesar is now incited against the Jewish people. Shadar alayhi l'Neron Kesar. Ultimately, again, so now the Caesar sends Neron Kesar against the march on Yerushalayim. Ki ka'asi, when it comes to Yerushalayim, Shadar gira l'mizrach, asan alfa b'Yerushalayim. When Neron Kesar shot an arrow to the east, it landed in Yerushalayim. L'mayrav, he shot an arrow to the west, asan alfa b'Yerushalayim, fell in Yerushalayim. La'abaruchos, whichever direction he shot an arrow in, so ultimately, again, asan alfa b'Yerushalayim. The arrow fell in Yerushalayim. Amar le the Yenuka. So Neron Kesar goes over to a child and he says, Psokli Psukech, tell me, what are you learning in Cheder? Amarle, V'nasati esnik masi be'edom bi'adami Yisrael. I will take my vengeance in Edom, against Edom, through the hands of my people, Klal Yisrael. Amar kucha brich u'baylecha ruve beise, u'baylecha proyadei ba'hugara. So Neron Kesar said, it is clear that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to destroy Yerushalayim, and he's going to wipe his hands on me. Neron Kesar realized that he was the agent to destroy Yerushalayim, but that ultimately, again, he would be punished for that act. So I'll say, what happened? Arak va'azal v'igayer. Neron Kesar ran away, and he converted. V'nafak minei Rabbi Meir. And I'll say, but I just want to point out, there's so much to say on each of, right? Why Rabbi Meir? Why? Okay, we'll have to save it. Shadre la'aspasianos Kesar. So now the Caesar sends his most trusted general, Vespasian, right? Vespasian is sent to march on Yerushalayim. Asr tsar alet last shani. He laid siege to Yerushalayim for 3 years. Rabbi says, so now there's a 3-year siege on Yerushalayim. Havu buhu hanot las satiri. There are 3 rich men in Yerushalayim. Nakdiman ben Gorion, ben Kalba Savua, and ben Tzitzis Akasas. Rabbi say these are not normal names. Where do they get these names from? Nakdimon ben Gorion. Why is it Ben Gorion? Shenakta lo chama ba'avuro. The sun stood still for him. So Rabbi say it actually means the sun pierced through the clouds for him. This is the story of Maseches Tainis, where the wind, right, in Menachem Ben Gurion, where Klal Yisrael owed a lot of money to the government, and ultimately, again, a miracle occurred, and the sun pierced through the clouds, ultimately giving them more time for repayment. Again, story of Maseches Tainis. Ben Kalba Savua, Rabbi say, remember again, Ben Kalba Savua literally translates as what? The son of the satiated dog, not amongst the most popular names. Right? So I'll say, so why is he called the son of the satiated dog? Whoever came into his home and he was as hungry as a dog, Yotzi Kishus Savea. Ultimately, Ben Kabba Savea say he fed the hungry. He fed the hungry. That's why he got that descriptive. So we'll say, which is really incredible. So we'll say, what was his name? His name was probably like, Chaim Yankel. But they called him Ben Kalba Savua, which I will say tells you something amazing. The most important name that you have in life is not the name you're given from your parents, but rather it's the name of your good deeds. It's the Keser Shem Tov. I will say, there are two names we have in life. There's the name we get at birth, right, or by our bris, and there's the name that ultimately we earn as a result of our deeds. Right? What do you do in this world? What am I doing with my life? There's a name of accomplishment. The name of accomplishment is so much more important than your birth name. V'haraya, we don't know Ben Kalba Savua's real name. What was his name? Right? How was he called up? So, right, Yamo Ben Kalba Savua, right? What was his name? What did the guy call him up by? We don't know. What we know is the name of his accomplishment. Because we'll say at the end of the day, that's the greatest thing that you acquire for yourself in this world. Ben Tzitzis HaKeses, who was this guy Ben Tzitzis HaKeses? Shahaiset Tzitzaso Nigreres Al Gabe Kistos. Ultimately, again, his tzitzis used to drag on cushions. In other words, he wouldn't even walk on the ground. He would walk on cushions. So the tzitzis would drag against, that was reflective of his wealth. Others say, Shesa Kisaso, Mutelas Ben Gdolei Rome. Others say because his chair was literally, again, embedded amongst the noblemen of Rome. Chadamar, so we'll say, amongst these three rich men, Chadamar Lahu, Ana Zainalu Bechiti Usari. So one of the rich men said, I will support Klal Yisrael during the siege with wheat and barley. V'chad amru b'dechamra u'b'demilcha u'mishcha. The second guy said, I will support the besieged Klal Yisrael in Yerushalayim with, again, oil, with literally, I should say, wine, salt, and oil. V'chad amar b'detzivi. And one said, I will support them with wood. So they'll have wood to go ahead and cook everything. So v'shapch rabbanon d'tzivi, and ultimately, again, the rabbis praised the one who committed support with wood the most. Why? Because remember, again, the support of wood was the greatest amount of support. The Gemara says, Rav Chisda kol aklidi havamasal shamei bar medtzivi. Rav Chisda would give over the keys to his storehouses to his servant, with the exception of the wood storehouse. Dam Rav Chisda. Akalba dechiti by shisin akalbi ditzivi. Right? Literally, again, for one kalba of wood, you require 60 kalb. For one kalba of wheat, requires 60 kalbi of wood in order to go ahead and bake it. In other words, we will say, remember, you need a lot more wood than you need of the other materials. So the Gemara says, Havaluhu lemezan esrim bechad shasa. There was enough to sustain the Jews of Yerushalayim for 21 years. Now, remember again, what's the goal? What's the goal of sustaining Yerushalayim for 21 years of famine, or 21 years of siege? I'll say, what's the goal? Work out a diplomatic solution. Remember again, there is no way to go to war with Rome. Rome is bigger, Rome is stronger. But the idea is, at least if there's food in Yerushalayim, we're not going to starve to death. And we can work out, it gives us 2 decades to work out a diplomatic solution. So the Gemara says, what was the problem? Hava buhu hano baryoni. There were these baryonim. And I will say, what's a baryoni? Rashi says, anoshim reikim upochsim lemilchama. Empty people who want to fight. And I will say, these guys, they wanted armed conflict with Rome. And I will say, Rashi's definition is very profound, because often it's empty people are the ones who want to fight. In other words, I will say, thoughtful people want to negotiate solutions. Empty people are always looking to fight. So that's the baryonim. So Amrulu Rabbanon, Neifuk v'Ravishal Ba'al Da'adayu. So the Rabbanon said, let's go out and negotiate an agreement with the Romans. So what happens? So Neifuk v'Ravishal Ba'adayu. Lo Shafkinu. Ultimately, the baryonim, I will say, here's what's interesting. The baryonim controlled the entranceways and the exits to Yerushalayim. So they did not let anyone leave. So the Rabbanon wanted to leave to negotiate with Rome. The Bar Yonim would not let them leave. Amalu, Nefok v'navid karabadayo. So the Bar Yonim said, let's do battle. Amalu Rabbanon lo mistaya milsa. The Rabbanon said, it's not going to work. Don't do battle, it's not going to work. So we'll say, so this is the standoff between the Rabbanim and the Bar Yonim. Bar Yonim want to fight, the Rabbanon say it's not going to work. So what happened? Kamu kalinu lahano amiri dechiti usari vavakafna. So we'll say it's incredible. Tragic and incredible. What did the Bar Yonim do? The Bar Yonim burnt down the storehouses of wheat, barley, oil, salt, and wine. They'll both say, now what did they do? Why did they do this? So first of all, because when they do that, what do? They plunge Yerushalayim into immediate famine, and now there's no more room for negotiation. These are the two options. What are the two options? Either number one, surrender, or number two, fight. The Bar Yonim assume that the Jews are not going to want to surrender, so therefore, by definition, if I both say, I just want to point out, do you know what the heartbreaking reality of the Churban of the Beis HaMikdash is? The heartbreaking reality is we did it to ourselves. Remember again, how does the story start? The story starts with Jew against Jew, sinas chinam. It's Bar Kamsa. And I will say again, we always put on Bar Kamsa. It's not just Bar Kamsa. The unnamed Balabas, and Rabbanim. Why didn't you do anything? You see a Yid being humiliated and you don't do anything. How do you sit idly by? And then I will say again, who burns down? It wasn't some Roman infiltrator that burnt down the storehouses. It was us, I will say. The Romans didn't destroy the Beis HaMikdash. We destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. The Romans didn't destroy Yerushalayim. We destroyed Yerushalayim. I say it's absolutely overwhelming. So the Gemara goes weiter. So the Gemara says, what did they do? So Marta Bas Baitus, this one tells a story. Marta Bas Baitus, this was a woman, a noble woman, a Jewish noble woman in Yerushalayim. Atiras Yerushalayim Havya. She was one of the wealthy women of Yerushalayim. Shadarte l'shlucha. So she sent her servant out to the marketplace. Va'amrilei zil aisli smida. Go buy me some fine flour. So the azal is dabin. Asa Amarlu Smida Leka Chiyura Ika. So the servant comes back, he says, Marta, there's no more fine flour, but there's white flour. Amarle, good. Zil Aisile, go buy me white flour. Ada Azal is dab. By the time those servants went back, it's already sold out. Asava Amarla Chiyurta Leka Kushkara Ika. There's no longer white flour, but there's coarse flour. Amarle Zil Aisile, good, buy me the coarse flour. Ada Azal, by the time the servant got back, is dabin asava amarla gushkara leka kimcha desari ika. There's no more coarse flour. Now there's only barley flour. Amarle zil aisili. Good, buy it for me. Ada azal is dabin. Havashavos. So by the time ultimately again he got there, it was all sold out. Havashlifa misana. So she was not wearing any shoes. Amra, because we'll say she was a noble. She didn't have to wear shoes, right? She didn't have to wear shoes. So what happened? So Amra, she said, "Let me go out myself." This is Marta. See, let me go out myself and try to find something to eat. So I'll say, so what happened? So Esav la parta bekara umesa. So as she was walking barefoot, some animal dung, right? Some animal feces got stuck to her foot. She became so disgusted by this that she died. Kari Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said about her, Haraka bach va'anuga asher lo nasta kaf ragla. Ike de amri grogros Rabbi Tzadok achla v'istanyim. Others say she ate the dried out figs of Rabbi Tzadok, which we'll discuss in just a little bit, and ultimately she became so nauseated that she died. So the Rabbi Tzadok Yosef Arbon Shnim Betanis, Rabbi Tzadok fasted for 40 years prior to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, in the hope that his fasting could somehow stave off the destruction. Rabbi Tzadok was so emaciated from his fasting that when he would eat something, you would literally see the food going down his esophagus outside of his body. When he would try to heal himself after he would fast, ultimately, again, I will say, what would he do? He was so emaciated and so weakened that in order to give himself some sustenance, they would give him a fig. He would suck the moisture out of the fig. So I will say, this sucked out fig, right, is what Marta found, and she ate it because there was nothing else to eat. But she was so repulsed by it that she died as a result. As Marta Bas Baitus was dying, as she was dying. Ultimately, again, afikta l'chol dava v'kaspa. She took out all of her gold and silver. Shadisa b'shuka. She threw it out into the marketplace. Amra hay lemay mibayli. She says, what do I need this for anymore? Behind the is the meaning of the pasuk. Kaspam bechutzos yashlichu. We'll say, as the pasuk in Yechezkel says, that literally, again, the circumcised will become so terrible that they will throw their wealth into the street. So we'll say, I just want to point out, before we go on, what's the Musar Haskell in that story, right? It's such an interesting story that ultimately, again, she goes ahead and tells her servant, get me flour. He says, no more this flour, right? Comes back. By the time he goes back and forth. See, I will say, there's an incredible Musar Haskell in this, which is that sometimes in life, a person has to stop asking questions and a person just has to do, right? Has to act, right? Don't ask, just do. Every single time the servant loses out on the opportunity to purchase some form of sustenance because he's always going and checking back. What should I do? What should I not do? But say there's a time in life to ask and there's a time in life to do. And if you spend your life always asking about what to do and failing to do, failing to act, often the window for dynamic activity and the opportunity to make a dramatic difference often closes. Incredible Musar Haskell. So the Gemara goes weiter. Abba Sikra, Reish Paryon Yerushalayim, Bar Achsir B'Yochanan Ben Zakkai. So I'll say Abba Sikra was the head of the Baryonim in Yerushalayim, the head of the Baryonim, and he happened to be the nephew of Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai. So we'll say, just want to point out how interesting this is, right? So Abba Sikra is the head of the Baryonim, Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai is the head of the Rabbonim. So again, the head of the Baryonim is the nephew of the Gadol Hadar. So I'll say, so what happened? Shalach lei tabet sina lagabai. So Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai sends a private message to his nephew, Tabet Sikra, come meet me privately. Okay, Amrale ad imus avidetu achi asa. So what happens? Abba Sikra shows up, and Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai says, how long are you going to do this for? Right? We're dying of famine. Remember again, I will say the Baryonim are not letting anyone out of the city. So no one's allowed out. There's no food in Yerushalayim. People are dying in the streets. Not because of the Romans, because of us. So Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai says to his nephew, how long are you going to do this for? Amar Lebo says, incredible. Ma'i avid, di'amina lahu midi katiluli. It's incredible. Abba Sikra says, uncle, I don't know what you want from me. I have lost control of the Baryonim. If I try to tell them something, they'll turn on me and kill me. This is incredible. Amrale, chazili takanta. Lididi, the epoch, after the Haviatzala Porta. So Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai, the uncle says to his nephew, okay, Abba Sikra, I need you to find me a way out of the city. Find me a way out of the city, maybe I could effect some level of salvation. Amrle, so Abba Sikra says, okay, uncle, Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai, here's the plan. Nakut nafshach b'ktsiri. Right? Put out word that you're very sick. And let people come and do bikur cholim, people come and visit you. So I'll say then, what do you need to do? Essentially, it's incredible. You need to fake your own death. How do you do that? Take like a dead animal, put it under your bed. I'll say that way again, there's the smell of the decomposing carcass. Right? That way again, based on people will think that you really died. And what's going to happen? Let her put out the word that you died. So we'll say first one line at the bottom. And then what happens? But make sure it's only your students who carry your funeral beer, right? Because everyone knows, we'll say that a living person is lighter than a dead person. We'll say lashon of like a dead weight, right? A living person, by definition, what's the lashon of? Moses says, but there's lashon of repositions their weight. There's a more technical word to it, right? Distributes their weight, right? A dead person, of course, right? Dead weight doesn't do that. So the problem is, if people carry you who don't know you, ultimately they're going to realize you're alive. So it has to be your students, very few students who are in on this. So we'll say what happened. So Avadachi, Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai does it. They put out word that he's very ill. Then they put out word Nebuch. Baruch Dain Emes, Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai died. So we'll say what happens. Nichnas bo Rabbi Eliezer mitzad echad, Rabbi Yeshua mitzad acher. So two Talmidim come in. So kimatu lepischa. So we'll say, so now get ready for this. They're carrying the coffin of Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai. They're at the entranceway of Yerushalayim. So remember again, the Bar Yonim aren't fools, right? And by the way, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was probably not the first person to try this. There are probably other people, because remember, just to be clear, you cannot bury the dead in the walls of Yerushalayim. That's right. There are no cemeteries in the walled city of Yerushalayim, right? There's Har HaZeisim, which is on a mountain opposite, but we don't bury the dead. I will say, not only do we not bury the dead, you do not leave the dead overnight in Yerushalayim, to this very day. So I'll say, Pashtos, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was not the first person trying this idea of getting out of Yerushalayim, pretending you're dead. So what did the Bar Yonim do? So they wanted to stab the body. Let's just making sure you're dead. So Amar Lahu, so the student said, Yom Rabban Dakrule. So the student said, are the Romans going to say that the Jews stabbed their rabbis? By the way, every day, right? Are they going to say that the Jews stabbed their rabbis? Right? Are they going to say such a thing like this? Or be such chas v'shalom? So this is a sign of disrespect. So the Gemara says, fine. So the Bar Yonim said, fine, we're not going to stab the body. We'll just push the body, right? Mitchim is literally push. In other words, we'll rough up the body to see if it reacts or not. Amar lahu yomu rabban dachfu. People are going to say that the Bar Yonim, the Jews, push their rabbis. They push the bodies. So fine. So both say they let out the body of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Paschule bava nafak. So we'll say. So what happens now? They bring the funeral bier of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai to the Roman army. Now, both remember again, it's on the Gemara before. Who's in charge of the Roman army at this point? Vespasian. So they bring Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai for Vespasian. So what happens? Nafak kimatzah. So we'll say what happens? When you get to Vespasian, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai jumps off that bed, right, and he says, "Pasa, right? Amar shalom alecha malka, shalom alecha malka, shalom aleichem, right? Shalom aleichem, right?" So I'll say it must have been quite a scene, right? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai jumps off the funeral bier, right? He says, Shalom Aleichem King, Shalom Aleichem King. So Amarle, so first of all, Vespasian says, Mechayeves trei katla, I should kill you twice. Chada dalad malka ano. Number one, I'm not the king. I'm not the king. I will say, so remember again, it's considered to be a show of disrespect to the Caesar calling someone else king. So first of all, I'm not the king. The Garzli Malka, Vesu, Imalka Ana, Ad Ha'idna Amai Lo Asis Legabe. And furthermore, again, if I am the king, remember again, I've been here for 3 years. Why have you not come to see me up until now? So we'll say, Amrle, so Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai responds, Dika Amrit Lav Malka Ana, the fact that you say you're not a king, I will say, Amad Beis, Ibra de Malkaat, you will be a king. Di'i Lav Malkaat, for if you are not a king, Yerushalayim will not be delivered. We'll say Yerushalayim is the holiest city in the world, and even when Yerushalayim falls, Yerushalayim cannot fall into the hands of a simple person. Yerushalayim itself only falls into the hands of a monarch. Dichsiv ba'halavanon ba'adir yipol ve'in adir el hamelech dichsiv va'ya'adir mimenu ve'in levanon el beis hamikdash shneimar ha'hara tov hazeh va'halavanon. So we'll say someone Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, you might not be a king now, but I could assure you most certainly that you will become a king. And that's what you said, that if you are the king, right, why didn't I come to see you up until this point? He says, I'll tell you, there's a good reason. We have a problem. We have an internal problem called the Bar Yonim. We'll say it's interesting that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai shared this with Vespasian. He wants Vespasian to understand that the Jews as a whole do not want armed conflict. The Jews as a whole do not want to engage in. The Jews as a whole want a diplomatic solution. But we are being held hostage by these Bar Yonim inside of the city. Lo shafkina, they're not letting us out. Amrilei, so Vespasian said, Ilu chavis shal dvash v'darkon karachale. If a person had a barrel of honey and there was a snake coiled around the barrel, lo hayu shovernes achavis b'shil darkon. Doesn't it make sense to shatter the barrel to remove the snake? So we'll say. So in other words, what Vespasian seems to have said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is, if the Bar Yonim are holding you hostage, break down the walls. Break down the walls. If you try to find another way out, ishtik. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had no retort to this statement. So Rabbi Yosef said, "Vitim Rabbi Akiva, Meishiv Chachamim Achar, V'Daitam Yisakel." They said about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in this pasuk that literally, as a result of just the catastrophic circumstances unfolding, so ultimately Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai lost his wisdom. Literally, again, he turns the Chachamim around, v'daitam yisakel, and their knowledge will be corrupted. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, you could have responded. What could you have said? Shaklina savsa, v'shaklina le ledarkam v'katlina le, v'chavisa shavkina le. No, Vespasian, that's not correct. If there is a snake coiled around the barrel of honey, you don't break the barrel. Rather, what do? You take a pair of tongs and you remove the snake. In other words, that we looked for a way to exit the city without smashing the walls, right? You want to keep the walls intact. So we tried to negotiate a bit more of a sophisticated exit from the city. Okay. So we'll say, as they're talking, we'll say first of the intermediate lines, Adahachi, Asa Pristaka Ale Miromi. As they're talking, a messenger from Rome comes. Arale kum de misle Caesar. So ultimately, again, and he says to Vespasian, the messenger says to Vespasian, arise, Caesar is dead. The Roman Senate has voted, and they have voted to confirm you as the next Caesar. So I'll say this is literally as Vespasian is talking to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So ultimately, again, Vespasian was wearing one shoe. He wanted to put on his other shoe. He couldn't put on a second shoe. Then he wanted to take off the first shoe. He couldn't take off his shoe. So Amar my high. So Vespasian says to Rabbi Yochanan, what is this? What's going on with my shoes? Amar le, lo tistar, don't be upset, this is understandable. Shmua tova asilach. This is a result, ultimately, again, of the good news that has just come to you. Dechsev, shmua tova, tedashen etzem. We'll say literally again, so good news makes the bones swell. Makes the bones swell. I was well saying, sometimes when a person has good news, literally again, not only does the ego swell, but the body swells. The body swells as well. Elamaita kante, we'll say this is incredible. So how do you take down the swelling? Leise inish delo misvi daitach mina. Look at someone who you don't like. V'lach lif kamach, bring him before you. Dechsev, v'ruach nechei tivash karem. Sa'avad haki, so Vespasian found the guy he didn't like, brought him before him. Sure enough, again, the swelling went down. I will say much to say about that as well. So Vespasian said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, you're clearly a very wise man. Why have you not come to me until this point in time? So the Gemara says, I told you, the Bar Yonim. Vespasian said, I also told you what you should have done. So Vespasian said, I'm now going to be leaving, because I now have to go back to Rome. I am the new Caesar. And someone else is going to be sent here. So Vespasian, obviously very impressed with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, says to him, I'm leaving, but here's what I'll do. Before I go back to Rome, ask me for something and I'm happy to give it to you. Amrle, so Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai asks for three things. Number one, Tein li Yavne v'chachameha. I will say, remember again, number one, the Beis Din had already resettled to Yavne. So he says, it's the Sanhedrin. So he says, give him, spare Yavne. We'll say, what is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai trying to do? He's trying to ensure the continuity of Torah leadership. So spare the Rabbanim of Yavne. That's number one. Vishushilta de Rabbi Gamliel. Spare the family of Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel was a direct descendant of David HaMelech, the Nasi. Spare the Davidic family. Ensure continuity of the Davidic line. And give me a doctor for Rabbi Tzadok. Most Rabbi Tzadok, as we were talking about before, was fasting for 40 years before the Charbon. Now, why Dafka Rabbi Tzadok? We'll see. So we'll see. Now listen to this. So these are the three things that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai asks of Vespasian. And by the way, Vespasian gives him all three. So Karav Rabbi Yosef Yitin Rabbi Akiva. So what's Rabbi Yosef? This is Rabbi Akiva. Said Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Meshiv Chachamim Achar V'Daita Misakel. So we'll say essentially now Rabbi Akiva takes issue with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and he says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, what did you do? What a missed opportunity. If Vespasian was telling you you could have something, what should you have asked him for? Vespasian, go home. That's what I'm asking you for. Turn your army around. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, again, you asked for three small things. Give me the family of Rabbi Gamliel, and that's Rabbi Silber. You could have asked for Vespasian to spare Yerushalayim. Shabbos say, why didn't Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai do this? V'hu savar dilma kulei hai lo avid v'atzala porta nami lo havi. What was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai afraid of? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was afraid of, say, is that with a guy like Vespasian, you get one chance. Maybe if the request was too big, Vespasian would have said no, and then what? They would have gotten nothing. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai also knew that he could have asked to spare Yerushalayim, but he was scared that if the answer to that was no, he would have lost it. So therefore he asked for three small things. Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, what a foolish mistake. You could have saved Klal Yisrael. Rabbi say, who's right? We'll never know. What would have happened had Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai asked to spare Yerushalayim? Would Vespasian have granted that or not? So Rabbi say, who knows? Rabbi say, this is what it means to live in the post-prophetic era. What it means is sometimes we have to make decisions and we have to make a call, and you don't know, is it the right call or not? But all you can do in the post-prophetic era is make the best decision you know how with the information you have at hand. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made the decision he felt he needed to make. Could he have saved Yerushalayim, not saved Yerushalayim? We'll say that we will never know. We'll never know, at least until Mashiach. We'll say, all right, we have to stop over here. Literally, again, middle of the Ma'aseh Mirat Hashem. We're going to start at 3:30 tomorrow morning. All right, now we'll start promptly at 5:45. We'll be all right. It moves. It doesn't move quickly, but all right. We'll say 5:45 tomorrow. We'll say Mirat Hashem tomorrow to be continued. Incredible Gemara. All right, Chevra on Zoom. Have a great day, everyone.